now? Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Is this all the zone?
We're not starting yet, but that's all right. we got 1 more minute till we go live. So
It's very uncharacteristic of all of us to be so early.
you good? All right, so let me welcome you to the fourth and final President Candidate Forum for today. My name is Bruce Armbrust. I'm math and physics faculty member here at the college, and I'll be moderating this event. Just to give you a little preview of what's going to happen, after I introduce our candidate, he's going to have 5 minutes to give sort of an introductory statement, after which I will ask him questions that were presented or given to me by the board. And he'll have 30 minutes to answer those questions. When that's done, we're going to turn it over to all of you, give you a chance to answer or ask questions of the candidate, and that includes those that are watching live on the internet. When we get to that point, you can go ahead and send in those questions, and hopefully we can get to them as well. And then when that is done, there'll be a brief closing remark from the candidate, and then our hour will be up. So with that, let me please introduce Mr. Jeff DeFranco. He currently serves as the Vice President of Administrative Services at Lake Tahoe Community College. He's worked in multiple educational settings, including K-12, community college, and four-year institutions. Before joining LTCC in 2012, Jeff worked for Springfield School District in Oregon for 9 years as a senior-level district administrator. His roles have included leadership and oversight of fiscal, facility, technology, bonds, grants, development, government affairs, and public relation functions for educational organizations. Jeff earned his bachelor's degree from Cal State University, Chico, and his master's degree in educational leadership with an emphasis in higher education administration from the University of Oregon. He's also received a professional certificate from Stanford University in strategic decision and risk management. And Jeff is currently pursuing a PhD in global leadership and change from Pepperdine University. So with that, Mr. Jeff DeFranco.
Great. Well, thank you for having me. I feel very privileged and honored to be here with all of you today. It's great to have so many committed and friendly faces in the audience. I know many of you gave up probably a good portion of your day today to meet the candidates, and this is obviously a very important choice and decision for our institution. And so I want to spend some time today responding to your questions, reintroducing myself, and talking about my vision for Lake Tahoe Community College to make sure you have enough information about me to feel comfortable with me potentially leading this institution moving forward, because that is what I absolutely desire to do, to work alongside all of you to lead this great institution and enhance the South Shore and our college. So 3 things in the intro. I want to do a brief reintroduction. I want to talk about a key core value that I have, and then I want to talk about why LTCC. And so from a reintroduction, I know many of you. I've had the opportunity to work alongside many of you, and I think we've done some great things at this college in the last 4.5 years that I've been here. But I want to tell you a few things about me that you may not know that really have been formative to me as a leader. And early on in my career, I actually started off, my first job in higher education was an adjunct faculty member in physical education at CSU Chico. And then I went on to be a graduate teaching fellowship at the University of Oregon. And I worked with student leaders. I was the advisor to the Associated Student Body. I had 25 student interns I coached throughout the year, and I taught leadership courses, and then went on to be an adjunct faculty teaching leadership courses for the university. So I really started working very closely with students. And why, you might ask? Well, because I was that student. I was involved as a student. I was influenced by my time as an outdoor adventure leader at Chico State, as vice president of the Associated Students at Chico State. I had excellent student service professionals, faculty, administration that coached me. I was the student rep to Academic Senate, and I said, wow, higher education has been life-changing for me. People have invested in me. This is what I want to do for my career. So it was no mistake that I went on to University of Oregon to seek out a degree in educational leadership with an emphasis for higher education administration. And my goal at that time, my stated goal, was to be a college president. And so this has been my career path since day one, and I feel like this is the perfect place to do that. Secondly, I want to talk about a core value that I have, and that is public education is the great equalizer. And I wasn't the first person to say that. My boss and my mentor, Dr. Nancy Golden, who I worked with for more than a decade in Oregon, that was her mantra. And I was compelled by it, because what I know is that our public education institutions, albeit imperfect at times, create the opportunity to make life-changing opportunities for our students. It's an upward path to mobility. It's a path to more critical thinking, higher thinking, and being a better, more informed citizenry. So knowing that public education is a great equalizer compels me specifically to work at community colleges, right? It tells me these are the students, I don't want to work at Harvard or some four-year exclusive university. I want to work with community colleges where we can make a difference in the lives of all of our students. Because as I shared with the interview committee, we serve the top 100% of students in the state, right? So we need to open our doors and support all these students and be there on their behalf. And this really crystallized with me at my first graduation. Who here has been to one of our commencement ceremonies? Right? And if you've been there, you know the stories that these students come to us with, whether they've been raising a family, working multiple jobs, supporting their families, their extended families, coming back to the education after a decade out. And when I watched these students walk across the stage, it was a very crystallizing moment for me that community colleges, and specifically Lake Tahoe Community College, was the right place to be for me if I wanted to move forward with that value and help support that value. Finally, why LTCC? Well, we've done great things, right? And there's still more to be done. There's still more to be done. And a lot of why LTC is all of you. And by all of you, I mean the students that I have a relationship with, the staff, the faculty, the community members. It's great to see so many community members out here today that we've been able to work together. Working alongside all of you, this is where I want to be. This is where I want to raise my family. This is the institution I want to lead with you. This isn't a launching point for me. This isn't just a stop. I'm deeply committed to the South Shore, and I believe I could help lead this institution to the next level.
All right, thank you, Jeff. So question number one from the Board of Trustees is, how do you propose to help Lake Tahoe Community College accomplish our goals for student equity, access, and success?
Great question. And those are three things that should be at the forefront of our radar. Every day, as a leader, that should be in the center of my bullseye. What did I do today? What did I do today to make a difference for equitable outcomes for our students, expanding access to all of our students, and most importantly, having student success in completion, right? Because it's not just about course success, it's also about completion. So I want to talk about a few of those things. First off, with equity, we need to realize, and I think this college, and this is one reason I want to be part of this college, under the leadership of Dr. Kid Murillo, has really started a good conversation about student equity. And what we know is that in order to have equitable outcomes, right, it's not just about equitable access. There's a lot of talk about we need to make equitable access. Well, we really need equitable outcomes. And in recognition of that, we need to realize that not all students need the same supports. And we need to be able to provide whatever the support it is that that student needs to be able to succeed. When I was in K-12, we used to say, all students can learn, but not on the same day and not always in the same way. And I think that's a good mantra for equity, realizing that different students need different supports at different times, and we need to ensure not just equitable access, but again, equitable outcomes. Well, how are we going to do that? So let's talk about access. I think that's a great place to start. So we're a community college. We're open to the top 100% of high school graduates. But are we really open? Are our doors really open for our students? Do they have all the tools and resources they need? And I think a common misconception with those outside of this room, I would say, probably many people kind of out beyond working outside community colleges is, well, isn't community college very inexpensive? Isn't there a Board of Governors fee waiver, right? Isn't there a Pell Grant, right? It's easy to go to community college, but we know there's many barriers of access. And those barriers include transportation, childcare, cost of tuition, cost of textbooks, right? And most importantly, foregone wages. For many of our students, that's the difficulty. They can't step away from that to take the time to invest. And so how do we help remove those barriers of access and give an expeditious and supportive pathway to completion, right? Because one of the biggest barriers of access is time, right? Time, taking 3, 4, 5, 6 years, and you still don't have a meaningful transfer degree or a meaningful certificate, right? So identifying what their educational goal is as a student, knowing that and figuring out how we could support them. So 3 things that I'd like to propose that I would support as superintendent president at this college. And some of these are somewhat new, and then some of these are a continuation of the work we're doing. So first off, to help remove barriers to access, I'm very supportive of moving towards open educational resources. And I think we're positioned well. We have Dr. Larry Green, who's one of the foremost experts and advocates in this area. We recently received a $50,000 grant to move down this pathway. In that regard, what's great about this is no one needs to come in as a new president and say, hey, here's what we're going to do. We just need to support that, support the faculty adoption, support our faculty leaders to help make that possible. So that's one thing. Expansion of the lending library. That's my second proposal. And we've been doing that, right? So those of you that have been here for a while, it started with the TRIO lending library. We've expanded that to the Hope Club students. We've been able to expand that now to our EOPS students in recent years. Potentially now maybe to our veteran students. So how do we find different funding sources, along with the foundation, who's been a critical partner in the lending library, to make books available to our students, right? So they could check out a book and use it over the course of the quarter, and they could be available to another student next quarter, right? So lending library, and then also moving into the technology space, because we know students don't just need books to succeed, they need technology. So we've had the calculator program that's been very successful for many years. We're in the process of acquiring 20 laptops that we're going to check out to our Hope students. How do we continue to get resources, state resources, Bradinger resources, foundation resources to expand that lending library so we can remove that as a barrier of access? And then the third thing with that is related to the South Shore Promise. And so this is something I like to propose, but it would take the endorsement and the commitment of the board, the faculty, the staff, the foundation. Everyone would have to be on board with this. But the idea with the Promise program is it's a last dollar financial aid program. It's a commitment we make to students in their K-12 career, our K-12 pipelines. And we say, if you come to us, we're going to help fund your, either in many schools it's your first term or first year. We probably start with first term. And they complete the FAFSA, right? They get the Board of Governors fee waiver if applicable. They get a Pell Grant if applicable. And then this becomes a last dollar program to help put them over the top for their tuition and fees. More and more community college districts are doing this in the state. We are going to miss out on serving our communities and miss out on really kind of growing our ability to open the doors of access if we don't at least explore and have a conversation about this. So as a superintendent president, you don't ever come in and say we're going to do this, but this is something I'd like to propose for discussion. And there's a lot more details there that we could talk about in the future. And so that is the issue of access. Now to success. So success is really at the heart of it all, right? Because we don't want to just get students into the door for them to cycle through remediation courses or not move to their meaningful educational goal. So we need to figure out what that educational goal is, what is their articulated educational goal, and how do we support them in meeting that? And that's done a few different ways. First and foremost, it's done with excellent faculty, because they are the ones that are in the classroom day in and day out, interfacing with these students, most directly impacting that student success. But if we could build a culture of success around here and change this from all of ours, from a job to a calling, to a purpose. And if when Jose's here at 4 a.m. clearing snow, he knows I'm doing this so these students can come and be successful. When Georgillis is cutting foundation checks and processing those, she knows this is the role I play as a classified staff member in helping our students be successful. If Bill Abico is making sure the network's up so students could get access to the wireless, that's his role in student success. So if we could be very success-minded, supporting the faculty, recruiting great faculty, hiring them, retaining them, properly resourcing them, those are things we can move towards success.
Thank you. So question number 2 then is, with the construction of the new university center scheduled to start next spring, LTCC is in discussion with several regional colleges and universities with the objective of providing students access to baccalaureate and graduate programs. how would you propose to make such four-year programs available here on campus?
I'm glad to hear this question. This is an absolute top priority for the next superintendent president. Absolute top priority, should be hitting this on day one. And I would suggest that I'm the candidate that's best positioned to do that. Dr. Kidman-Murillo has done some great work on this. I know she will push to her 11th hour, probably to the 59th second, to do that work, to continue to bring on partner institutions. And I think I'm in the best position to take the baton from her, not lose a beat, and move forward with this. And let me tell you why. I've done a lot of research on university centers. I've been thinking about this and discussing this with other campus leaders and Dr. Kidman-Murillo for many years now. If many of you remember, before we received the donation, this was a concept that we were going to try and retrofit part of campus to be a university center. And so back as far as then, it was saying, well, what does a university center entail? I've had the privilege of visiting the College of the Canyons University Center. I've met with Kathy Ritz, who is the University Center director there. Make no mistake, no one will argue, that is the flagship university center in the state. They have 5 university partnerships, CSUs, private nonprofits. They are who we need to model after and need to learn from. So I've developed those relationships. I know what worked for them and what did not work for them. I had a lot of dialogue. Fast forward, another option, Kenyatta College in the Bay Area. They have 3 partners, in-state and out-of-state public institutions. They have a private institution. They have an online DE component to it. They're probably more the size and the model that we want to look at, right? They're probably more appropriate for us. So again, make contacts down there, learn from their lessons. These are people who are in my network that I can make a call and help get connected with other institutions and contacts of those institutions who do these university center partnerships. Finally, I had the opportunity to visit the Shasta University Center up in Reading with a few of my peers here. It's a great facility, but it's very sleepy. It's very sleepy and very spacious. And that is absolutely the opposite of what we want for this investment. So we have a donor that's making a $5.8 million investment. In Shasta, they weren't able to build the partnerships. They have a handful of partnerships for a few things that are serving 15, 20 students. We need to get after this right away. And we need to, how I suggest doing that is we can't just sit here in the basin and say, you know, this is the program we want to offer, and we want that institution to offer it for us, right? This is a marriage. There's a partnership here. We need to bring together these institutions. Where do they see demand? Where do they want to grow? And what do they think will work from a business model perspective up here, right? Because these are businesses. It's going to have to work for a business model perspective for them to want to come to us. So we need to identify that and then make sure, you know, we don't want to, as I said, it's a marriage. We don't want to, you know, get into this with anyone. We want to make sure that they're a good partner, that they are somebody we want to co-brand with, that they meet our goals, they meet our local demand study. But that's critical. And then finally, I would just say, again, part of putting the network into play is I served on the CSU Chico Alumni Board for 6 years. I served with Bob Linscheid. He was a trustee for the CSU system for 9 years. And he was the chair. That's somebody who's a contact. That's somebody who I call out to on day one and say, Bob, I need you to help put me in touch with CSU presidents in the North State. And I know you have a relationship with them. Help me open the door. Going back to CSU Chico, where I know the president because she was a faculty member there when I was adjunct faculty member, putting the call in. How do you make these connections? Because I know just here, those of you that are, you know, Lisa and Marilyn, their assistant, it's hard to make a call into our office and get to us, right? You can't just call down and say, hey, can we have a conversation? So how do you bridge those networks? How do you make the entree? So very excited to do that work, and I think it's critical work because we need to have these partnerships in place before we open this university center.
Excellent. Okay, thank you. Question number 3. LTCC enrollment is in decline. How would you address this problem, and what, in your experience, demonstrates your ability to implement your proposed solution?
Yeah. So this is a great question. I'm sure it's a question that's on everyone's mind, right? This is on everyone's mind. And this question should be tied to question 1, right? Because if we have access, if we remove barriers to access, and we have greater success, that's going to immediately impact enrollment. And by that I mean a lot of our enrollment, what not everyone realizes, is loss between fall and winter quarter, or from fall to fall retention. If we could have greater persistence, greater retention, that's going to dramatically improve our enrollment. So it starts really with success and then also opening those barriers of access. So there are a number of strategies that we could do beyond that. One thing that we have done here that I'll speak to real briefly is we've diversified our FTS stream, so full-time equivalent students, FTS, and we're having partnerships, whether it's our Incarcerated Student Partnership Program, dual enrollment, our public safety partnership with the Joint Powers Authority, and that's helped kind of settle the FTS a little bit, right? And if we hadn't done that, we would really be in a world of challenges right now. And especially with the Incarcerated Student Program, I'll kind of note, we brought that up and faculty jumped in and said, yeah, we want to do this. We're willing to do this. We see the social justice benefit of this. We see the enrollment benefit of this, and we're going to jump in and partner with you and make this happen. So we need to have that balance. But I think one thing that we're concerned about here is our face-to-face enrollments, right? Because we don't want to just work at a campus where everything's online or off-site, right? We want to have a vibrant campus here in the South Shore, and that's what I'm committed to. So let's talk about what we could do. First and foremost, we need to increase our capture rate from our feeder schools. And with that, specifically the high school. I think last year our capture rate was about 28%. Our goal is 50%. We need to increase that capture rate, and we got to focus on two student groups. First off, going back to access, those students that haven't traditionally been college-bound, right? How do we make them college-bound? But then secondly, what about that student group that we could sell them, and more importantly, maybe their parents, on us as an affordable quality option, right? We are an affordable quality option. Come here, get your AA for transfer. Let us move you on to great schools like UC Davis, Berkeley, the CSU, and we have a track record of doing that. We could tell that story. So one strategy I would recommend is relooking and rethinking about our fall quarter registration cycles. And again, I'd have to have the support of our student services staff, our faculty, and others, the board, to do this. But I think we should be looking at registering students during the spring term at the high school students, to begin fall term. And this is a strategy that's used at colleges throughout the nation, and it has proved to be successful. There's what's called summer melt, where basically summer happens and they just kind of melt away. These students disappear. And where did they go? They said they were coming to us, but they never showed up. And the research shows you get them to apply, and we're already be doing that through dual enrollment. So they're already be in our system. We're already their homeschool. You get them registered in spring, and then you touch point them. You give them nudge technology, and not the technology that we're used to, but they want a Snapchat or a text or a push notification. That's what's going to speak to them a few times over the course of the summer, and you touch base with them, and they're going to be much more likely to show up on your door first thing. So that's absolutely one thing we should do to improve enrollments, is increase that capture rate. Also, we have a great opportunity here with the California-Nevada Interstate Attendance Agreement. Dr. Kidd and Murillo, our board, many community leaders fought for that for 3.5 years, right? Fought to get that in place. We have that now, so we need to expand our look. We need to build a similar sort of pipeline out of Wattell High School. We need to really reach out to those students on the Nevada side of the basin and let them know that we are a quality option. So those are some things that we could do locally. Additionally, there's some things we could do with distance education. We are an online education school, right? We're in the online education initiative, and we are perfectly positioned to be a key player in that, right? We're one of the early adoption schools. We have a lot of faculty that teach and are great, known for their distance education. So how do we become more of a player in distance ed, so that way we continue to bring in those students from a distance ed standpoint, make online education initiative work for us, and build that out. So that's something that we could do. Something else that I think we could do that I believe there's some interest in, and again, this is a differentiator, and I think you have 4 candidates. Everyone is qualified to do this job, is my belief. All 4 of your candidates are qualified to do this job. But what I want to tell you today is things that differentiate me and make me what I believe better positioned to do this job and meet the needs of Lake Tahoe Community College District. And one of those things is residential living. And I firmly believe until we bring residential living to the South Shore, it will be a hurdle for students being able to attend college here in Lake Tahoe. And we know we're in the process of a residential living study. I think many of you know I've had the opportunity to probably meet with about a half dozen developers over the last 2 years. I've sat through a number of conference presentations. I've been on the phone with folks at districts up and down the West Coast, including community colleges that have embarked on residential living or they're in the middle of exploring residential living, and talked to them about what is working, what are your hurdles? And what we see is that there's a movement toward public-private partnerships where a developer brings in the capital. They do a 50-year ground lease, 30-year ground lease. They build the facility, they rent out the facility, and it brings that residential living option to your campus. We have a world-class brand here in Lake Tahoe. I think it's a perfect fit for us. We have been working on a feasibility study this last 6 months. I don't want to steal the thunder of that report too much, but it'll be going to the board on December 13th. There'll be a presentation here in this room that's available to campus leaders on November 29th to get the results of that. But what we know is that our housing market, it's expensive, there's low availability, and there's low value in it. And we also know that we have a lot of students from Vegas, the Bay Area, internationally, that want a place to live, and they want to live on campus. And that demand tells us that we're probably well positioned, if there's support from campus and the board, to go out and explore bringing on a residential living partner to maybe bring a 100-bed unit to this campus. That's something that could change our world from an enrollment standpoint. It's not just about those 100 students that live there, but all of a sudden now we have stuff happening on campus 7 days. All of a sudden now we have vibrant student life, right? That's what students want out of their college experience. That's one thing that many students want. And many more students are going to be interested in coming to us as a 2-year option if it feels like a 4-year campus, because that's part of the experience, right? So that is something else that's really critical. I want to just double check my notes here and make sure I didn't miss anything super critical. I think, the final thing I would just say as it relates to this is we have a world-class destination here. We can be California's premier destination community college. We already have the premier destination, right? Lake Tahoe is a brand that's well known. My background in communications and marketing, I think, is advantageous to me in this role. When I was in K-12 in Oregon back in 2011, the legislator and the governor acted and they moved to open enrollment statewide for K-12 districts, so regardless of your home district. We were very fearful of this. We were a blue-collar district next to Eugene, the university town, right? We thought we would lose students. I was at the lead, working alongside a great and skilled team to put together a marketing and recruitment effort to bring families and students to our schools, to meet our teaching staff, to meet our principals. Not only did we maintain our enrollments, we actually grew our enrollments slightly. And when we went into that, there was fear of like all the students we're going to lose. So doing things like that, bringing in social media expertise, bringing in marketing expertise, considering maybe looking at an outreach specialist position if resources allow it, getting out to families in our local community, getting out in the households, helping break down those barriers that are difficult to navigate for our families. Those are all things we could do to help increase our enrollments here in Lake Tahoe.
Thank you, Jeff. So question number 4, LTCC, like all California community colleges, faces rising costs in many areas, including operations, salaries, and benefits. Again, how would you address this issue, and what, in your experience, demonstrates your ability to implement your proposed solution?
Yeah, that's great. I think this is another differentiator, right? It is a challenge being at a small rural college. It has been a challenge, it is a challenge, it will continue to be a challenge. Our efficiencies of scale will never be what you have at Los Angeles or San Diego or Los Rios or any of those, or even Sierra College. We won't have those efficiencies of scale. So it is absolutely critical for whoever the leader of this institution is to have a strong understanding of budget and finance and to know how to leverage resources, how to bring in additional resources, and how to manage resources. And what I want to talk about is growing your pie, because that's the best way to manage this situation. We know PERS and STIRS rates are going to go up. We know we're going to want more technology to better serve our students. We know we're going to have need to replace instructional equipment. We know we will have these needs. And so the best way to deal with this is grow our pie. And part of that starts with having an entrepreneurial spirit. And that's what I think we need to embrace as a campus. We need to be the underdog, right? We need to be committed as like, we're fighting uphill, but we're going to be entrepreneurs. And even though our challenges may be greater financially, we're going to be able to do it better than these districts. And so some things that I've done in this realm that I would suggest continuing to do is first and foremost, being a statewide advocate for small rural community colleges and the funding mechanisms that affect us, right? That's absolutely critical for whoever is in our key leadership roles. And so, as many of you know, I served on the Chancellor Bryce Harris's, the Chancellor's Advisory Work Group on Fiscal Affairs. And That group was tasked leading into the 15-16 budget. The governor was putting a lot of money to the base allocation. How should this go out? And a big conversation was, well, just go out evenly on an FTS level, right? And and to show you who's around this table, I am the small college rep, right? I'm the small college. I'm there with LA, San Mateo, Los Rios, San Diego. And so it's not, at those folks, in many of their minds, it's yes, FTS level. What I believe I was able to do was help compel them and help them build an understanding for the unique challenges we face as a small college, the lack of the efficiency of scale that exists here, right? Because we have similar overhead costs as some of these big districts. We still have to have payroll. We still need to have somebody enrolling these students, right? And convince them of that and make a case. And in the end, it's a drop in the bucket to the state. But they ended up doubling the rural allocation. So instead of us getting about $600,000 a year, because we're a rural school, beginning in 15-16, we got nearly $1.2 million. Those are the things we need to do. We need to be at the table. We need to be advocating. And I would say I have many of the networks and the connections to help support that and to continue to be an advocate. This last year, the governor's budget started with no money going to the base allocation in January. And I had the ability to go to a legislative reception that the ACA, the California Association of California Community Colleges Administrators, puts on, as well as in partnership with the Association of Chief Business Officers, which I'm a board member of, to go to this. And there was legislators there and staff. And what I knew is the most important conversation that day, the legislators, of course, all due respect, they're very important, but the governor's driving policy in Sacramento right now. He's the most powerful governor the state's probably ever seen, I would say, or at least in recent history. And so talking to the Department of Finance staff about the importance of base allocation dollars to our state and explaining them that we can't solely get resources on a growth model, right? And so that's the current state. Everything's about grow your FTS is the only way to keep up with cost. But making a pitch for more base allocation dollars so we could have quality programs, right? Let's not make this all about quantity, especially as the number of high school graduates birth rates leading to high school graduates has declined nationally, right? So there's less students out there. Let's not make this a quantity equation. Let's make this a quality equation. And so having that voice advocating for it, those of you that are tracking, in May we had $75 million go to the base allocation, and that went out to districts, including districts like us that aren't growing. So we need to be advocating at the statewide level. So I think advocating is a key element of Grow Your Pie. Another part is going out there and getting resources. We've done a good job in this district getting grant resources, our TRIO grants, a number of career technical grants, a number of different grants out there to bring resources to this college. When I was in K-12, I oversaw the grant department. In my first year, we applied for 21 grants, and we got just over $1 million of receipts. And what we did is we not only built up our grant strength centrally, but we trained an army of grant writers, teaching staff, administrators, directors that were going out for $5,000 grants, $10,000 grants, $20,000 grants. And in my final year there, we actually applied for 159 grants and got $2.5 million. A lot of those those extra 100 grants, were a lot of the $5,000, $10,000, $50,000 grants, but they made a big difference. That's something we need to do here because the state alone is not going to take care of us. We need to move from a state-funded institution to a partially state-supported institution. And then with that, it's the foundation. And many of the things I talked about today with book lending and promise programs is not possible without the foundation. I believe I built a good relationship with this foundation board. I'm looking forward to working alongside all of them moving forward. When I was in Springfield, that foundation was bringing in about $75,000 annually. My final year being staffed with the foundation, they were bringing in $230,000 annually, and I was pleased to hear that they're up above $400,000 this year. And finally, I think I have the experience to be a chief development officer. So CEOs also need to be chief development officers. They have to be comfortable making asks. They need to know how to build relationships. When I was in K-12, one of my final things I did was help cultivate a $375,000 donation from a donor who wanted to support our arts academy with a team of individuals, right? Because we all do it together. But I was at the point in the lead of that area to make that ask. These are the type of things I think I could follow in our great successes that our foundations had with the $5.8 million and continue to do more of this because we need more resources than just apportionment resources to succeed.
All right, in the last couple minutes, the final question. What is your vision for the future of Lake Tahoe Community College in the context of the local South Shore community, the surrounding region, and the California Community College system?
Right. Got it. So my vision for us here in the region is that we become the galvanizing force for the South Shore. We're the hub of the community, the hub of innovation, economic engine, arts and culture, right? And that's what the community told us they wanted via the 2020 vision. So the vision's right. We just need to continue to move down the path and deliver on it. Another piece of my vision is expanding access and making Lake Tahoe Community College the place that you come to significantly impact your and your family's life through access to upward mobility, better jobs, higher education levels through Lake Tahoe Community College. So that's specific to here. And I really believe in our premier destination community college is going to get us there. If that is our target, all these different things that support that target will help move us forward. In the region, we want to be a player that not only lifts and elevates the South Shore, we want to elevate the basin, the North State, the Sierra Nevada foothills. I have relationships and partnerships with key administrators at Los Rios and Sierra College. I've been down to Western Nevada Community College and met with their administration, both up here and down there. So how do we enhance education in the region? Because it's not us against them. If they're doing better, we're doing better, right? As a region, we need to improve. And I could tell you, the challenges for the North State are different than in Southern California, from an enrollment standpoint, from an economic standpoint, and that's very important to recognize. Finally, what's our role, and what's my vision for our role in the system, right? That's the third part of the question. And I want to be recognized as California's premier destination community college. I want that not just to be a tagline or a vision statement, but what people say about us. I also want to be the advocate for small rural community colleges, and we're already doing that. Dr. Kindred Murillo, many of you, we have been the advocate on the statewide level for rural community colleges. I want us to be the poster child for that and the one that's at the legislator's doorstep, at the governor's doorstep, at the chancellor's doorstep, saying this is what we need. And then also I think there's three things, just for instance, and this isn't all encompassing, but there's three things that I think we could do better than others. Because sometimes, although our smallness is a challenge, I think it could be our strength. I think we could be the leader statewide in open educational resources under the leadership of Dr. Larry Green and our faculty and staff here. I think we could be a leader in online education under the leadership of Trevor Thomas and our faculty and staff. And I think we could be a leader in best practices for incarcerated student programs under the leadership of Dr. Michelle Rizzo and Shane Reynolds. These are three things we could do better than other districts and that we're already positioned to be out in front. So just a for example, but I think there's things that we could do that we could actually be the beacon for the state instead of trailing behind the state.
Thank you, Jeff. So now we're going to open it up to questions from the audience, and just to give you some ground rules. First, we're going to allow a response of about 3 minutes per question. That way we can get to many of them. And the other thing I wanted to remind everyone in the audience is that questions regarding the candidate's race, religion, gender, things like that are inappropriate and will not be fielded. All right, so make sure your question directly pertains to the candidate's ability to do the job. So if you are interested in asking a question, go ahead and raise your hand. We'll float around. Why don't you go ahead and start with Julie there. And Internet World, if you have questions, please submit them at this time.
So in your current position, how often do you interact with the classified staff, and how would they describe your leadership style?
Well, I'd like to pitch that question back to you, but I'll take a stab at it, right? Because, I mean, you tell me. I think one thing, I mean, I'll give a few examples. So, and it's different depending on the department. So if you talk to many of the custodians, they've been out here with me when I've been in the plow truck. They've been out here with me at midnight on Snow Globe where I'm dropping de-icer next to them. And with that group, it's very much, we're on a team, and when you're in Snow Globe, it's like you're in battle together. You're trying to keep things going. And so that's one approach, right? I think there's other departments maybe that I haven't had the opportunity to work as closely with, right? And so it's more of a passing relationship, so it's more cordial and friendly. What I could tell you is that back in my time in K-12, I was the person that was specifically in charge of the Classified Professional Development Day. I created that and built that out. I was in charge of our Classified Staff Appreciation Week. I had more than 100 employees in my various areas that I had to help support and coach, because that's the role of a leader, is to help them in their career advancement. And about 95% of those were classified staff members. So part of working in the areas that I've worked in has caused me to work more with classified staff. I think there's a handful of folks throughout my career, somebody who I mentioned, who's one of my references, some folks here that I've noticed somebody who has a great opportunity to grow and has desired leadership and coaching and support. And so I'm willing and I like to take on that mentor-mentee relationship, but it needs to be two-way. You know, people have to want to be coached to do that. But I think, you know, part of it is also just being available. And what I found, oftentimes there's a joke, you know, Mary Ellen's trying to chase me down, many of you know, and that if I just hang out in the commons or just kind of walk through campus, that's when I get the best information and the best interaction. Or, you know, just kind of pop in, where's Katie and Diana? I just pop in to their office and kind of say, hey, what's going on? Tell us what's happening in technology. And I think that's where I get the best interface of information and the best relationship building. It's just being out there and being available. And I would like to, as a president, to be able to do more of that, right? More unscheduled time, more out in the ranks. And I think one thing that I would commit to doing now, I was going to kind of save this for say the college address, but I'll just put out now, is thinking ahead, right? You can always be one step ahead, is committing to job shadowing, you know, a half dozen positions each year. So I want to be at the front desk of enrollment services alongside of those staff registering students. You know, I've done this before, but I want to be out in the plow truck at 4 a.m. with that staff. I want to be next to Bill Abico's desk, trying to understand what he's doing. I don't think you want me to job shadow him too much. You're probably more watching, less doing in that case. But that's something that I would commit to doing as president, so I could really understand people's roles, their value, and understand where they're at.
Great. We've got another question in the back.
There's been significant investment in career technical education from the Chancellor's Office. What do you see as opportunities for CTE at Lake Tahoe Community College, especially as it pertains to the South Shore business community?
Great question. So career technical education is there's really having a moment right now, right? There's a real synergy of opportunity here. So I'm going to talk about a few things that we're doing and then how I see that moving forward. So first off, we have Advance, which is our adult education and consortium. And one thing that's unique to our Advance program is it's not like some other regions in the state where it was a reshifting of the resource and they had to kind of deconstruct something to rebuild something. These resources came to us and we weren't replacing anything, so we could say, what does this community need? And I think we've done a good job and we need to do a better job. And I was actually at the chamber board meeting this morning. We were talking about this topic and Advance was presenting about how do we make sure that we're providing programs that give people the skills they need to serve the local needs of the business community, at the same time advance their own personal careers. So that's one thing that's happening there. We have the strong workforce funds that are coming out, and the beauty of the strong workforce funds is they're very reinforcing. If you do more CTE and better CTE, meaning more students are successful, more students enroll in CTE, and more importantly, more students not only complete and get the certificate, but they actually get labor market value from their job through that CTE training, the state will give us more money, right? So if we do good work, they're going to give us more money there. So there's a synergy of things coming together. We have some great individuals leading these efforts, Brad Deeds, Frank Gerderman, and others. So part of it is just really continuing to support those things and moving together. Another part of it is having that ongoing dialogue with the local business community, especially in the areas of hospitality and tourism and some of the things that are part of our brand. But I think the third part of that we're missing is really figuring out how we do things that make this be a business hub. Things like the Mountain Lab, things like getting higher speed internet up here in the mountain. So that way we could expand from the type of jobs that just exist in our current economy, but actually, our proximity to Silicon Valley and, our beauty and the type of life that many people want to live, especially the millennial generation, we could be really well positioned to providing a lot of jobs up here, and also our proximity to Reno and everything that's happening there. A lot of jobs up here where people are telecommuting and doing great work there. So we need to make sure that we're providing the skills and the training and then also the infrastructure to allow that to happen. But I think just in closing, I would say is there's a lot of synergy here, and it's all still coming together. But this is a great opportunity statewide, but especially here in Lake Tahoe.
All right, other questions? One back here.
Over the last year, some of our students have experienced racial slurs on and off campus, and there have been derogatory and discriminatory graffiti and conversations directed at LTCC's multi-race and multicultural practices and policies. Both as an LTCC president and a community leader, how will you address these kinds of situations should they occur, and what actions will you take to create a safe, inclusive, and respectful environment?
Great question, Maxine. Thank you for asking that. So first off, as a president and a leader, you need to model the way. And model the way needs to happen beyond just these four walls of this institution. It needs to start here with how you interface with students and having a zero, absolutely zero tolerance. Don't even crack the door there. Zero tolerance for those type of behaviors, those type of actions. But you need to get out in the community because the community needs to understand that. They need to know where you stand. And we need to have education, and sometimes education happens through dialogue. And I have a very personal experience with this when I was in K-12 back in 2004. As leaders, we were moving forward with a diversity plan because we wanted to make sure, and let me actually paint a picture here. It was a K-12 community. We spanned hundreds of square miles. And so on one end of the community, the west side, we had more urban community, right, more diverse community, many English language learners. And on our far east side, we have more rural, conservative communities. So you see, these all kind of come together at the high school level. And we were seeing a lot of issues where students weren't being respected. And so kind of remind yourself, 2004, what was happening. There was a presidential election. Gay marriage was a big issue on the ballot in multiple states. There was a lot of tension around these things. And as leaders, we said, we're going to do this diversity plan to ensure that there's education about different ethnicities, different cultures, different sexual orientations, various sexual orientations, and make sure, most importantly, that all these students feel safe and respected. And we did a safe space campaign, right, at our different classrooms, at like office doors for faculty and administrators where they knew there was a safe space. But I'll tell you, I learned something through this. As leaders, and we were a little insular, not totally realizing our community, so we're pushing forward because this was the right thing, right? This was the social justice thing. We were doing the right thing, but we didn't necessarily bring the community along. And it backlashed on us for a while. And so then we needed to expand and bring this group together in what ended up being the Safety and Respect for All committee that brought together. And in the end, what everyone could agree upon from these very divergent groups, and we were bringing people, every voice was at the table, but everyone could agree upon is that no student, no individual should not feel safe and respected in our district, right? And so that core value, starting from that standpoint and building out from there, I think is one way you approach that.
Yes, up front.
Thank you. Mr. DeFranco, I've adjunct mathematics here for since probably '07.
Yep.
I forgot how long I've been here. Coming from the Bay Area, I see a lot of diversity. And I just want to say to the staff and faculty here in '07, when I moved here, I was afraid that I wouldn't get the job because of who I was. And I got the job, and I love working here with you guys. I just love you guys. I really do. So I teach math with the math department, but I also work with, for the past 3 years, with Upward Bound program. Mm-hmm. I don't know if you're familiar
Yes.
with that program. And I know I work with a lot of the first generation Hispanic students. And I'm wondering, how do they feel when they come on campus? Do they feel like me, afraid? And right now, in our society today, a lot of people are afraid of our new president-elect. And I don't blame them for being afraid. But I guess I want to say at this institution, how can you implement a multicultural program and not just have multicultural for one day? Because a lot of times you go on campus, it's just for one day. But I think it should be an ongoing program that all the students, and multicultural is not just for minorities, multicultural is for all of us because we all came from someplace.
And where from the Bay Area are you from?
Richmond, California.
All right.
I don't say that too loudly because people get scared of Richmond.
So.
But I work as a professor at a university, and I teach teachers. So I've been in education, K-12, just like you, for a very long time. And in 1975, I want to say this quickly, that in Oak Grove School District, we had very few minority students. So we developed a human relations program that was ongoing for several years.
Yeah. Well, thank you for your question. So I was born in Hayward, grew up in Fremont, and then eventually moved to San Mateo. So, and so as a result of that, I think I grew up with a diverse set of friends, right? And I think that's something that I look at. I'm raising 2 boys in this community, and I want to make sure that they have diverse interactions and that they have the ability to, benefit from the richness, which is, multiculturalism. So it's very personal to me in that regard. So I want to respond to your question in a few ways. I mean, first and foremost, I believe, I've kind of already addressed the issue of tolerance, right? So we need to start from a place of tolerance. Obviously, there's a lot of divisiveness right now, which is leading to a lot of concern and friction that exists out there. But also a place of honoring cultures, right? And so I think if students see their cultures honored on our campus, right, and it's not just about a day, right? But sometimes there are the days, like something that I've been talking to, whereas Laura Salinas and Sugachis about is our, next year let's do Dia de los Muertos here, right? And so students could see that we could learn and be enriched by that culture, and students could see that their culture is honored here. But also, students need to see that their students and faculty like them. And so ways that you do that, that's important. And what I've seen when I was at University of Oregon, we actually sent out many of our student ambassadors from some underrepresented populations back to their hometown to talk about the university, right? And I would suggest something like this here, so that way they know I'll be there. When you come, there will be people like you with your same experiences where there's somebody that you could connect with. But then also it's important on the faculty side. And it was a great loss of ours to lose Dr. Albert Ponce this last year. He's a great faculty member, ethnic studies guy. I've been in communication with him in preparation for this. But how do we make sure not only that we recruit and hire faculty of diverse backgrounds, but we need to retain them here, right? And there needs to be a culture that they want to be a part of and that they feel respected and honored in, because for our students to be successful, part of it is seeing someone in the classroom that they feel like they could relate with, that maybe has a similar cultural story and background. And I think, finally, this is something I've had the opportunity to engage and participate in different global cultures, had the opportunity to grow up in a more diverse area, and I think that I know all the richness that's given me, and I think that's a core value that's at the center of my work.
And that's why I said go both ways, because when I'm here working as an adjunct, the white students are very excited to know about this.
Yeah. Thank you.
All right. So other questions? We have an internet question.
Great. So they're out there. I just want to make sure I respond to them. So this is great. And, my first job in higher education was as adjunct faculty. And so I definitely experienced a little bit of the tiered structure that exists, and the compensation issues. So first and foremost, I would say that community colleges don't work or don't operate without adjunct faculty, right? So adjunct faculty really make this possible because many of them come with expertise. Maybe they're out in business and industry and they're coming and doing one course, so they're really up to speed on the latest and greatest information and techniques, so that's really critical. As well as sometimes we want to have a real specialization program where it may not be something that any of our full-time faculty members have the qualifications or the skill set or the background in. And so adjunct faculty play a very important role. So I want to acknowledge that. I think many of you know that there's, I have some adjunct faculty that not only have I been one, but I've been married. I am married to one. So obviously it's a group. I get a good sense of the challenges. Get a good sense of the challenges. And I think here at Lake Tahoe Community College, we've tried to, going back to since I think January 2013, almost about every year we've been slowly making progress on improving adjunct faculty compensation. And I think the full-time faculty have been really great in that standpoint of they've advocated for that, and there's even been times where they said, we want to do this for the adjunct faculty, which was above and beyond what they did for the full-time faculty. So in that regard, I think you have a full-time faculty that are trying to support those issues of compensation. So I think that's something we need to continue to work on, and we need to be competitive with our neighbors and folks in the region, and especially with online courses where people could teach anywhere in the world, we need to make sure that we're competitive to bring the best adjunct faculty in to work for us. So that's one piece of it. I think secondly is really finding a way to integrate them more in our decision-making processes and share governance, recognizing their work. And part of that is, sometimes it's a unit of release time, sometimes it's scheduling things, right? Because I know here when I'm in evenings, that's when I really see the buzz of the adjunct faculty. So we maybe need to change our systems where we schedule things to get their feedback, not necessarily in the middle of the day because maybe they're working another job, but in the evening when they're here, before or after their class. And so I'm kind of seeing that I'm getting close on time here, but I think there's a number of things that we need to do. I think it's personally something that I'm empathetic to because I've seen it firsthand, and supporting our adjunct faculty I think is critical because without them, Lake Tahoe Community College doesn't work.
All right, we have time for maybe 2 more questions. So any other questions? Yep, there's one in the far back. Actually, hold on for the microphone. It's coming your way.
Okay.
So the first one, can we hold you to a percentage increase on their wages? No?
Well,
Yes?
I would say, I would just say this, those of course are all done in negotiations with them being at the table. And I believe that there was just a negotiation that was approved for an increase over the next 3 years, starting this fiscal year for adjunct faculty.
Nice.
I don't have it committed to memory, but that was just recently approved by the Board of Trustees and really should honor the great work of the faculty negotiators and both adjunct and faculty who negotiate on their behalf and the board to support that.
That's great. That sounds nice. And the second one is a food question. What do you think about opening up a cafeteria for all the hungry students and staff and faculty walking around?
That is a great question. So that question came from a student. So where, I want to do this at the beginning. Where are our students at? Who are our students here? I see a few. Prince, Victor, thanks for making it. Thanks for making it back there. Cool. And I hope we got a few students online, right? Because they're digital natives. So I'm assuming a lot of them are watching this on Facebook. So if you're out there, want to see the like or the heart or whatever the appropriate way is to say what's up. So it's an excellent question. And so a challenge that this college has had historically is having enough scale to hold a food service program. I was involved working with Heather Cade and others in our office, Marilyn Sanchez, to bring on Keys Cafe for the coffee cart, which I think it's a decent option. I think Keys Cafe, I'm a fan of the products and services, but obviously their offerings are limited and their hours are limited. So I think a big part of this is there's a convergence of things that needs to happen, and one of the big things is residential living. Because all of a sudden, if you get residential living and you have 100 students living on campus, that is going to give you the ability to really expand your food services offerings. In all residential living, it doesn't necessarily mean that you would have 3 meals a day, 7 meals a week, or 7 days a week. But some residential living, they do what's called a 2x5. So they do 2 meals a day, Monday through Friday or something like that. So I think part of it's a scale. We need more full-time students on campus, right? And I think residential living, I think those are the 2 things that'll put over the top.
We have time for one final question. So.
Hi, Jeff. I just have a question about the theater program. It's been in the news a lot, and it's obviously in a state of change, and I'd like to get your views of a theater program, the importance on a college campus, as well as a cultural opportunity for a community.
Yeah. It's a great question, and it's a complicated question because there's a lot of things at play here, but let me try and address three different elements of it. And so the first element, what I want to say is we're in process right now, right? So I believe Academic Senate's going to be reviewing this tomorrow, right? The board is holding a study session the Tuesday after Thanksgiving where they're going to get feedback from the community. And so as a candidate, even an internal candidate, I don't think it's a good practice to kind of jump in and tell them what they should do. I think that the process should be able to play out and have those dialogues. Now, with that said, let me talk about just some personal feelings about it. First and foremost is our mission includes being a comprehensive community college. We chose those words very specifically. And when you look to 2020 vision, we talked about being the hub of the community, right? And part of that's arts and culture. So what I'm supportive of and what I think is the movement that may be afoot here is ensuring that we find a way to maintain use of the theater facility. And whether that's a community theater program, some way to ensure that there still are productions and performances and opportunities for individuals that want to do that, but also opportunities for community members. So I'm going to the show, the matinee show, this Saturday at 2 with my boys, and I want them to see, my wife and I, we talk about this often, that we want our boys to be able to see live theater, right? And as you know, in the South Shore here, we don't necessarily have as many cultural offerings. So I think I think it's important to separate an active theater as a cultural element versus 4-credit theater courses. And those are really kind of two different issues. And so I'm very committed of having that cultural element. And I'd actually like to see an increase in the use of the theater. I'd like to see film festivals, speakers, more things like that. If we're going to be a premier destination, community college, and we're going to be the hub here in the South Shore, we need to actually do more things in the theater. And part of that's re-looking at how we use our theater, because sometimes if it's so tied up with one element, it doesn't provide opportunities for these other things to come in. So I definitely feel strongly that facility should not be dormant and that it should have very active community involvement.
Okay, so thank you, public, for participating in this forum and asking the questions. And so with the last 2 minutes, Jeff, why don't you go ahead and have your closing remarks?
Great. Well, as I said before, I think you have 4 qualified candidates for this position. Hopefully I provided you with some differentiators today that I think make me specifically qualified for the challenges that we face now and that the opportunities that are in front of us in the future. As I said, this is not another stop on the circuit for me. This isn't landing a presidency. I want to work with you. I want to work here in this community with this board that's got a great reputation, with this staff, this classified staff, our faculty, the fellow administration. I think we have a great, good working leadership team. I want to work with all of you together to move this institution forward. I think also, personally, I'll just share, I'm going to offer this. I live in this community. I spent, back in our son was 2, we came up, my grandfather built a very modest cabin here in 1969, and my wife Casey and I decided we're going to bring our son Brody here for Christmas because we want to have a white Christmas in Tahoe. It was something I always wanted to do my entire life. And so I put in Google, how do I get a Christmas tree permit? And it brought me to College Drive. And I've been coming here for quite a while, and I had no idea this college was here. It's like December 22nd, and there was snow on the road everywhere because we don't plow the snows around that. And I pulled in the front door, and I was standing at the center circle. And this is years before I applied for this job. And I was like, there is a college here. This is amazing. So I'm going to work at this college someday. And I believed it then, and I believe it now. And I want to be the superintendent president of not only working with you for this college, but for the benefit of the South Shore. And then finally, I'd be remiss. I want to say, I'm here with my 2 boys, Brody and Rocco, who are both in the elementary school here. I'm here with my wife, Casey, many of you know. This is a team effort. You're hiring me, but you're going to get all of us because this takes broad shoulders to do this job. And I think we're rooted in this community, and I think we could continue to expand the community connections to make a difference. So I thank you for this opportunity, and I really hope I'll have your support because I don't want to just get hired. I need your support to help lead this institution together. Thank you.
So on behalf of all of Lake Tahoe Community College, we'd like to thank you, Mr. DeFranco, for sharing with us this afternoon and participating in this. And thank you to all the community that came. If you filled out any of the forms about the candidates, please drop them in the box in the back. Other than that, have a wonderful afternoon and go Coyotes.